In the world of boots, Nick's Handmade Boots stands firmly in the top tier for pretty much anyone who's ever had an opportunity to own a pair. So when Nick's reached out to me to see if I'd be interested in doing a long-term review of a pair of their handmade boots for the channel, of course I jumped at the opportunity and I'm happy to join that club. They were also kind enough to send me one of their heritage belts in a matching leather, so we'll also cover that today really quick as well. Today's video will be a 1-month review of the Overlander in the classic configuration. We're going to go over the overall fit of the boot, how I sized myself, as well as the break-in period and how that's gone for me. We'll talk about the overall craftsmanship and durability, and then we're going to talk a little bit about if this is going to be a good purchase for you based on your value proposition and what use cases you might be looking at. I'll leave a link in the description to both the boots and the belt, of course. And I'd be thrilled if you'd consider subscribing to the channel if you're interested in seeing the further updates of this boot. I'll be doing a 6-month update and then annual updates as long as I have the boots and as long as I'm doing this channel, so hopefully for a very long time. I'm Patrick, and this is Rocky Mountain Style. Okay, so to begin, let's talk a little bit about the belt that Nick sent me. They sent me their heritage belt, and of course I picked British tan Chromexcel to match the boots. And as someone who likes to match their boots and belt as closely as I can, and even if I have the exact same leather, that's optimal. I know a lot of you guys might be that way as well. I really appreciate the amount of leather options that Nick's has. And even if your particular belt doesn't have a listing on the website, my guess is if you sent them an email, asked very nicely, there's a good chance they could probably do a belt in any leather that they offer, as long as they have it in stock and things like that. This belt retails for $145, which is pricey, but when you look at the belt market, most high quality belts, or ones that are touting themselves as lifetime belts, are going to be right around that $100 range, maybe $120, something like that. So when you look at the overall thickness and just the sheer durability that this belt seems like it's going to have, and you can see here I've got a picture showing it next to 2 other, in that $100 range belts. I won't mention the brands, but you can see how much thicker the Nick's belt is. Most brands will tout themselves as being a 1-piece construction, better than being a 2-piece construction. And normally that's just because if you have 2 pieces, usually you're using 2 thinner pieces because it's a little bit cheaper to get, the nice piece of leather for the front, a cheap piece of leather for the back, and then glue or stitch them together. Nick's has 2 pieces of leather that are both thick enough to be their own belt and are both British tan Chromexcel. So you can just see the quality that this belt looks like it has. I've pretty much been wearing this with denim only. You could do it with anything you want, but if you have a shirt tucked in, button-down shirt, chinos, something like that, the belt is pretty beefy and pretty thick, and the buckle, once it's all done up, does stick out quite far. So definitely not a dress belt, but that's not what they're going for. So if you're looking for a great jeans belt that 100% will last you your entire life, pretty much guaranteed, and you want it to match your Nick's boots, you know where to go. All right, and now finally onto the boots. So to start, of course, we're going to go over the specs really quick so you know what I'm dealing with here. The Overlander Classic Config starts at $589 US. I opted for the British tan Chromexcel, of course, as I said earlier. That adds another $10 on top to the price, so call it $599. These are, of course, an 8-inch shaft. They have 4 eyelets, 5 speed hooks, and then the additional eyelet at the top that's used for really getting those laces locked in if you so desire. However, I pretty much go around the shaft. That's just sort of how I like to do it. The outsole is a very chunky and capable Vibram V100, and the boot's shaped using the famous HNW moderate arch last. This, of course, is my first experience with that last, and we'll talk more about that a little bit later. Now, I went with these specs because I really wanted to try out an 8-inch boot. This is my first 8-inch boot, and I wasn't quite ready to make the leap into the logger heel world, so that sort of limited what I was trying to pick out. So ultimately, I ended up going with the Overlander, and I'm really glad that I did. Now, before talking about the break-in, I want to talk about sizing and how I ended up where I did. I got a 9.5E, that's 9.5 Echo, and that was based on me providing my measurements, a photo of my Brannick, and then also doing an extra measurement where I got a tailor's tape and went sort of around the, the thickest part near the ball of my foot. I gave all that to Nix, told them, what I generally wear and how I like my boots to fit, things like that. And they said, you know what, Patrick, we think you should take a 9.5E. So I generally wear 10D in most of the high quality footwear I have, Goodyear welted, stitched down, whatever it happens to be. So 9.5E is right there in line with 10D. So I figured, you know what, that sounds good. Let's go for it. And Nix knows what they're doing. The fit I thought was absolutely phenomenal from the first wear. The overall shape of the boot was pretty optimal, I think, for my foot. And I consider my foot to be fairly average, so that makes sense that it's going to fit well because you pretty much make boots to fit as many people as you can, right? At least as far as the shape goes. So the heel cup was really nice. My heel fits in there nice and tight. There's not a lot of room on the back, and it has a nice shape going up over my heel into back where my Achilles tendon is. The footbed area up near the toe box is really nice. There's plenty of room for my feet to spread out. And all of that is to say that that's what I was looking for, because then over the top there where the instep is, it's handshake tight, what I like to say. So I should probably pick it up here. So right in here in these regions is where it was just a little bit snug. It just sort of felt like the boot was giving you a handshake. So I knew for a fact from previous experience that that's exactly kind of what you want to feel. You want to feel sort of a medium handshake there. And I knew after a few wears, the leather would stretch out just slightly in that mid part of the boot, which is exactly what happened. And now they're really, really custom fit, I guess you could say. Overall, I think it probably took 3 or 4 wears to get rid of that tightness to the point where they could start maybe becoming comfortable. All right, and as far as BreakIn goes, I've got 25 wears on these. I've had them a little bit over a month. The plan was to wear them every single day for a month. Now, I took a trip that I didn't want to take these big boots on to Las Vegas. If you've ever been to Vegas, you know how much walking there is, and I like to change my outfits for walking around, going to dinner, things like that. So a big chunky boot wasn't really in the cards. Also, there were a few times where I went to the office where the outfit I needed to wear wouldn't have worked with a work style boot like this. So 25 wears is about all I could manage in 5 weeks or so, but I think that's a really good number to give an opinion on the BreakIn. So what everyone told me on the Reddit forums and other things I've just heard from videos and things like that, people talking about Nix in general, was to expect a pretty rough BreakIn for the first month. So that's how my brain was configured. I was all ready for it. And I was actually really pleasantly surprised how reasonable the BreakIn was. So of course, for the first couple of wears, they were kind of tight, kind of stiff as you expect, but never to the point of causing any undue pain. I think for the first 2 or 3 wears, I wore them for half a day and then took them off just to be careful. And it wasn't because I was in pain. I just took them off trying to stave off any pain there might be on that second half of the day wear. But after those first few wears, I started wearing them all day long. And when taking them off, there'd be maybe a little bit of roughness on my foot, where it's, going up against the really hard heel counter back here that, needs to break in. But really that's it. There was nothing else in the foot area that caused me any problems whatsoever. No hot spots, no blistering, nothing. Now, stiffness is, of course, something that's a thing, right? So the boots are still very stiff after 25 wears. However, the leather insole and midsole have, I can tell, started molding to my foot to the point where I'd say they're actually molded to my foot after 25 wears. So when you're just standing or doing light walking, things like that, they're, because of the support, probably about as comfortable as any other boots I have, regardless of what level of broken in they are. So the shape and just the support is that good, where once your foot's imprinted, they're going to be really comfortable. So due to the overall stiffness of the boot, however, and because of the taller shaft and the thick leather here, walking around quickly or aggressively, or if you're walking around a festival or something like that, walking through an airport, still going to have a little bit of discomfort. So when I tie them up or lace them up, I get a little bit of extra pressure points on some of these first few eyelets here that you can feel if you're turning while you're walking, or if you're bending in an interesting way, or if you have your legs crossed under a table and your ankles are kind of like this. You can feel that extra pressure, and it's not super comfortable, but I have confidence that the shaft and those parts here are going to continue to get softer and softer with wear, of course, and then those will, be really comfortable. But in terms of break-in, I'd say I'd go ahead and call them broken in after 25 wears. They're comfortable enough that I wouldn't avoid wearing them in any normal daily situation. And yeah, they really weren't as bad as I thought they would be. So your mileage, of course, may vary, but overall, I'm very happy with the process and not upset about it at all. So that's the break-in. In terms of durability and craftsmanship, I'm actually really extremely impressed. So British Tan Chromexcel. Now, Chromexcel, of course, is one of those leathers that if you're in the boot world, can vary a lot in the quality. Sometimes even from a high-end brand, you can lose the Chromexcel lottery, things like that. Nix uses a really thick piece of Chromexcel, so you're going to have less bad grain break perhaps, or less likely for things like that to happen. Of course, it could happen to any piece of leather from what I understand, but thankfully that didn't happen to me. I think the leather has been really nice, and compared to all my other Chromexcel boots, the amount of grain break or whatever you want to call it here, the creasing has been pretty awesome. I'll try to put some close-up pics in, but really not unhappy at all with the leather. It's a beautiful leather. Of course, it smells like Chromexcel, and I just can't wait to see how this continues to age with time. So as far as construction and durability goes, since we just got through the leather, 25 wears, so I can't comment on the long-term durability. However, I can confidently say that based on every other boot that I've owned in my life, which is now, 35 pairs, something like that, these are by far the most well-built boots. They just feel like absolute tanks. It reminds me of Austin Powers when the henchman in the first one throws a hat, and they say, "Who throws a hat?" You could throw a shoe, you could throw this, and it'd be like that guy's hat, right? You could really hurt someone with these things. They're that beefy, that well built. Nothing seems out of place. No bad stitching. Really, they're just extremely well made, and I'm quite impressed. Even for the price point, I'm quite impressed with the overall construction. So as far as durability goes, given how I use them, I don't think there's really any chance that they're going to wear out in my lifetime. Maybe I start wearing them every single day for the rest of my life, and then of course they'd wear out. But if I continue to do the channel and I keep rotating boots in my normal rotation, yeah, these things are going to last me forever, and that's pretty much what I expect of them, is to last forever. So one thing to note, normally this boot has stitching through the bottom of the sole there on the V100 outsole. You can see that in the pictures on the website. Some leathers, however, don't like the stitching machine they use to go through the bottom of the sole. It'll leave marks, stains and marks on the leather, and British Tan Chromexcel is one of those. So Nix forgoes the stitch on the bottom. Of course, you still have the screws, and you still have, there's going to be cement in there, and the stitch down and things like that are going to, and nails in the heel are going to be your basis for holding everything together. So Nix is claiming, and I believe him, that the extra stitching that you get in the sole is pretty much just a bonus. These are going to be just as durable and last just as long as they're going to need to, even without the stitching. So I'm actually okay with that. I actually kind of prefer the cleaner look without the stitches. So it's kind of a happy accident because I was expecting the stitches and then they weren't there. So really no big deal for me. Now that we're through all the physical stuff, I want to talk about value and use cases. So whenever you talk about value or if something's worth it, there's so many factors that different people weigh differently that it's really hard to give a definitive view of, is this worth $600 in this case. So some things I can say, however, I do have a pair of more expensive boots than this, and I have many pairs of less expensive boots than this. And for $600, what I can say is that these are certainly a step above or a league above that mid-range boot category, which I consider to be from about $325 up to, the $450 range. And there's a lot of really great boot makers that live in that price range. They sell a lot of boots and a lot of people are happy with those boots. I own a lot of those boots and they're very nice. These, however, they're built better, they have better materials, and they just feel like they're going to last quite a bit longer. So I'm confident saying that these are a tier above. So if you're talking just in terms of overall build quality and what you think the perceived longevity is going to be, these are certainly worth it if you're okay living in that mid-tier range. If you want to step up, spend an extra $150, $200 on something, I don't think you're going to be unhappy with this. But ultimately, at the end of the day, like I mentioned before, Whether or not you're going to want to spend that extra going from a mid-range, less tank style boot into something like a Nix is really based on your own personal use cases. So as I mentioned before, pretty much wearing these to the office or just wearing them around town. I don't really do any outdoors work per se, other than some light yard work here and there, but I wear, old ratty tennis shoes for that. So for me personally, I wear these to the office. I like how they look. I like how they look with a, workwear style or a heritage style. And I think that's really cool. So looks are generally the first thing you're gonna perceive from a value perspective. If you like how these look and you want that look and you can afford them, it's always gonna be worth it. Buy them, enjoy them, love them, keep them for as long as you can. Now, if you're looking for a pure work boot, that's not really my expertise. However, I can see why people would buy these, linemen or firefighters, whoever it happens to be that's wearing these. I can really see why Nix has the reputation that they do. I would be really confident wearing these if I was working in, one of those kinds of jobs where it required this kind of footwear. And for me, I'm really happy to have these in my rotation. They're going to be in my rotation for as long as they can be, many, many, many years. So looking forward to seeing overall how they age. And I'm really thrilled that Nix gave me this opportunity to experience their boots. If you have any questions about the boots, obviously you know the drill. Leave a comment below and I'd be happy to answer. I need to really quickly thank all my patrons. I have a Patreon set up. It's not really to get me extra money. It's more so that I can build a community of like-minded people that like to chat about this kind of stuff. And so I take that money that I get in from Patreon and I do giveaways and other things like that. I've got some permanent discounts set up with some retailers, doing a giveaway every month, gift cards, things like that. So if you're interested in checking that out and supporting that and joining that community, head to patreon.com/RockyMountainStyle. Other than that, we're all done for the day. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.